So what have we learned? We've got with us now CNN legal analyst Paige Pate, CNN reporter Kara Scannell, and CNN national security analyst Samantha Vinograd. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
Kara, I want to start with you and first explore one of the major contentions here. This is from the GOP memo. Neither the initial application in October 2016 nor any of the renewals disclose or reference the role of the DNC, Clinton campaign, or any party campaign in funding Steele's efforts. Now, according to the Democrats' rebuttal, this verbatim phrase was in the application. The FBI speculates that the identified U.S. person was likely looking for information that could be used to discredit candidate one's campaign. The significance of the difference here, Kara, to you.
Well, so the Republicans are saying it should have been explicit and known that this was coming from the Democrats, but it's not. The normal practice in these sorts of situations is not to, quote, unmask who the source is. So by revealing the potential bias, the FBI's theory is that it will cure, and as long as the judge knows that someone is motivated. Because at the time that Christopher Steele was hired, he was also initially hired by a GOP rival to President Trump. Now, at the time that he eventually went to the FBI, he was hired by the Democrats and the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign. Yeah. But the normal course for these sort of applications is to make the bias known without revealing the individual source.
And let's also put that into the context of a year of outrage from many Republicans on Capitol Hill about unmasking, and now we hear from many of those Republicans and the president that they're disappointed or angry that Hillary Clinton specifically, or the DNC specifically, were not named here. Paige, to you, another passage here. According to the Democrats' rebuttal, the initial warrant application and subsequent renewals received independent scrutiny and approval by 4 different federal judges, 2 of whom were appointed by President George W. Bush, 1 by George H.W. Bush, and 1 by President Ronald Reagan. Republican presidents here and that role in the casting of this by Republicans, that this was a partisan effort on behalf of President Obama.
Right. I guess the argument now is those judges were somehow part of this grand conspiracy to start this FISA application and approve this warrant for political purposes. And obviously that is not true. What we know now is that when Director Wray, the FBI director who was appointed by President Trump, said that the first Nunes memo was inaccurate, misleading, did not contain all the information, we now know that to be true. So it strikes me as very odd that Representative Nunes is saying that there's some sort of collusion among part of the government to have furthered this FISA application, when even the FBI director who was appointed by this president said, no, your memo was misleading. We now know a little bit more about the process. And I think in this case, the process worked exactly as it was supposed to.
Samantha, the president talked about this last night on his interview with Fox News, and he called Adam Schiff, ranking Democrat on House Intelligence, a bad guy, and also referred to Democrats as the other side here.
Yeah, I listened to that interview, Victor, and for a second I thought maybe finally President Trump was talking about Russia. When I hear the phrase the other side or a bad guy, Vladimir Putin and the Russians are what comes to my mind as a national security analyst. And particularly after this memo came out, we learned again that Russia was trying to infiltrate the Trump campaign. That should make every American angry and worried, particularly the U.S. president, and would have been a prime opportunity for President Trump and the White House in their statement to say, okay, enough is enough. You tried to infiltrate the campaign. We know that's an old Russian spy trick, but we're not going to put up with it. Yet again, President Trump went and made negative comments about Democrats and Schiff, which frankly, Victor, I think is part of a White House crisis communications plan to distract and deflect attention.
Kara, back to you. The Nunes memo, one other element I want to hit here while we have time. The Nunes memo referenced the Yahoo News story by Michael Isikoff and said it was cited to corroborate the Steele dossier when it should not have been, because Steele was Isikoff's source. I mean, we all know that now. But according to the Dems' rebuttal, in fact, DOJ referenced Isikoff's article to inform the court of Page's public denial of his suspected meetings in Moscow. Important distinction?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the dossier was a small part of this FISA memo, according to the Democrats, which also lays out a lot of other detail about how Carter Page was on the FBI's radar. They had, in fact, interviewed Carter Page in March of 2016. Several months before they made this application in October of 2016. So the notion that this article was the another key piece of intelligence that the court was relying on doesn't stand up.
Paige, do you believe that, I mean, the Dems memo, the rebuttal says that the dossier was employed with narrow use here. Do you believe that this warrant would have been approved without the dossier based on what we know?
Honestly, Victor, there's no way to answer that question. And that's why I think a little bit of this argument between these memos, the back and forth, how important was it? Would they have gotten the warrant without putting in the Steele information? We don't know. I mean, the judges look at the totality of the evidence as put before them, and they make a determination. Is there probable cause here to support the issuance of this warrant? So at the end of the day, we know some of that information was provided. We know the bias of Mr. Steele was before the judges. They were aware of the credibility issues, and they made a determination based on all of that evidence, not just to issue the first warrant, but to then continue the surveillance based on incoming information. So what part it played, ultimately, only the judges know that.
Samantha, quickly to you, and you just touched on it just a bit at the end of your last answer, the timing here for the White House.
Feels like a cute coincidence. The White House is under significant pressure about real national security questions like clearances, Jared Kushner's access to the presidential daily briefing, and what we're actually doing to keep our country safe from Russia's attack. And out of nowhere, this memo gets released at exactly that moment, which I think is part of a strategy to distract and deflect from questions that the White House just doesn't want to answer.
All right, Samantha Vinograd, Kara Scannell, Paige Pate, thank you all.
Thank you.